Hey, what's up, everybody? Anthony Morrison here, and welcome to another edition of our WebinarFuel Client Spotlight series. And of course, during this series, what we're trying to do is interview some of our top clients and tell you a little bit more about how they're using WebinarFuel. How has it helped their business? What features and things are they using right now to get better conversion rates, to make more money, and ultimately to grow? And so in this episode, our guest, I don't even need to introduce you. I don't think everybody already knows who you are. Of course, it's Russell Brunson. Russell, thank you for sitting down with me today. I'm excited to talk about how you're using WebinarFuel in your business. So obviously, everybody already knows who you are. They already know ClickFunnels. They already know this like massive, epic thing. So I guess instead of telling us, hey, here's who I am and here's what I do, maybe just tell me a little bit about like how you're using WebinarFuel, what you're using it for in your business.
Yeah. In fact, to kind of explain that, if you go back 7 years ago when we first launched ClickFunnels, the way that we launched and grew ClickFunnels was through webinars. And literally, people think I'm exaggerating, but I was not. We were doing webinars probably 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, over and over and over and over again for a year. I did my webinar live over 100 times. And a lot of people are like, how did you grow ClickFunnels? I always want like some secret sauce. And I was like, I literally did a live webinar at least every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. 100 times in a row. And that's how we grew ClickFunnels. And that was the initial thing that got it into momentum. And then after a year of doing that, I was like, I'm tired of doing this webinar every single day. And I like perfected the pitch to the point where like every word I knew was flawless. And so then I went out, and this is before WebinarFuel was the thing. I went and started trying to figure out how to like plug it into different auto webinar software. And I would always do 2 things. I would take the auto webinar software and I'd build a version just in ClickFunnels. We'd split test A/B. And every single test, the ClickFunnels test always won. And so after a couple of years, I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep running this auto webinar through just directly through ClickFunnels, and had success with it. And it wasn't until about a year ago you came to me with your new thing, and I was like, it's going to be hard to switch over and put all the things in. And you're just like, just trust me. And so I decided, all right, I trust Anthony. I've seen all the things you've done. So I took my webinar, I put it into your thing. And the first thing that I noticed was in ClickFunnels, I wasn't able to do like the sequencing that you are able to do inside WebinarFuel. And so we spent a lot of time going out and like, actually now that we could do insane sequencing because of what was possible, we started writing sequences based on if they showed up and how long they stayed, and all these things I couldn't do because WebinarFuel puts it in a separate app where you can see all these things, right? Our sequencing and follow-up was amazing. And then we put it out there, we started testing, split testing back and forth. And I thought for sure ClickFunnels was going to win. And the first time we've ever lost to any other platform in a webinar sales was through WebinarFuel. And so we've been now running it for, I don't even know, almost a year now. And it's the control, and we haven't been able to beat it yet. So it's been amazing for us. And I don't have to do webinars live every single day like I did to launch ClickFunnels initially.
Saving you time. Absolutely. No, that's always good. You've done over 1.7 million in sales tracked through the platform. What I find is really awesome is I told you that right before we started interviewing. Like, really? That's really cool. That's awesome.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Like, this is amazing. This is great news. And one of the things, though, you told me when we first started talking about it, there were a few things that really stood out to you. Obviously, the sequencing. But what do you think about? Because look, we have a lot of people that will watch this. They're thinking about using the WebinarFuel platform, but we went a different direction than everybody else. Everybody else was like, oh look, they don't even have to download software. They can just watch it in a web browser. It's so easy for them to get on. And so that's like the sales pitch is that, hey, you can just get right on this webinar on a web page. We went the opposite way, and we were like, hey, we make them download software. And for me, looking at it, I always thought that made the most sense because at least from my perspective, and love your take on it, but from my perspective, when somebody goes through the trouble of downloading the app, installing the app, and getting on the event, and it's in a software similar to how we're recording this in Zoom, you have their attention because you had their intent. They had the intent of actually being on this thing instead of just clicking a button, watching a video on a browser. Can you tell me how you think? I mean, obviously your conversion rates are really good. You guys have made a lot of money. Do you think that it playing back in the software and really putting people in that type of environment is a good thing?
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, me and you think very similar. In fact, I tried to build an external software to run webinars through when we were trying to do all the testing stuff. And I was never able to get it to work, but I had the same belief of like, you can go to Webinar or Zoom or something where they're in a different experience. And same thing, like we run live events where people fly from their house and they go to a hotel room and like it changes because the environment changes, right? When you're on a web page, there's a web page playing and now you're doing 5 other things. It's just a video playing over here versus when it's in this app, software, it feels different, right? It feels like it's more alive. You feel like I'm entering into a room, I'm going to an event, I'm doing something different. And because of that, it pre-frames people in a different way. And so far, what we've seen from that is definitely higher conversion rates. That's number one. Number two, what's been interesting is also, because it's also, there's an app on the phone. And so it's been really cool because I probably once a month or so, I go back through my funnels just to make sure that nothing is broken, right? And every time I do, I start getting the sequence again and the app's popping up and then the things and like the notifications are hitting me, not just in my email box, which I don't ever check, but it's hitting me in different spots that the WebinarFuel gives access to. And what's cool is like, as we've been doing it, then we're plugging other webinars into it. More people have the app downloaded and more like the barriers, just like Zoom. I'm sure Zoom was difficult initially for them to get people to download the app, but after the people have downloaded, now it's on the platform. And so as we keep using it, other people keep using it, it's getting more and more simple for people to use. And the community as a whole just keeps growing. And so it's huge. It's definitely gives people a different frame that they're entering your presentation from, and they're way less likely just to close it because they've got this thing open and they feel like they're part of a live experience, which is changes everything when it comes to sales at the end.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing is like, I think probably you see a lot of this obviously with ClickFunnels, like the best place and the best way to sell one of your lower ticket items is obviously on a page, right? Whether it's long form page or VSL on a page, whatever. Like you want to do a webinar, sell $7 product. Like this is a lot of minutiae.
A lot of work for that.
$7, right? It's probably not worth it. But then I think there was always these stages of like, hey, if I want to sell something inexpensive, I'm going to do this VSL. I'm going to put it on a web page. If I want to sell something, $1,000 to $5,000 or so, I'm going to do webinars. If I want to sell like this $20,000 thing, right, then I'm going to do either this live event or I'm going to talk to people on the telephone. I'm going to have this completely different environment for this even higher ticket thing. And I think that what happened with when people started automating webinars, they took the webinar out and they really just made it a VSL on a web page that kind of might sometimes look like a webinar.
Yeah.
Maybe. And
try that like live webinars. Like I can tell I'm sitting on a page watching a video.
Yeah. Well, you have to now press play. And that was one of the things for me, like auto webinars always worked decently well. They weren't great in these other platforms, but they were doable, right? Like I could still make money with it. But the minute that things changed when you couldn't auto play anymore, you couldn't have sound anymore, like when you land on a web page and you have to press play to watch your webinar, I mean, everybody knows it's not real. And so like, even though in WebinarFuel, we don't teach people to like promote it as like, go to this live thing. It's just the perception that people get when it's played back in software. And they're like, wow, this is, they feel like they're, like you said, like at a thing, kind of like when you go to a live event, you're look, better than me. I mean, how much did you sell in at one, I think that one live event was like $15 million, something like, because you have people's attention though. Like, wouldn't you agree with me that it's not really the fact that I'm at the live event or I'm on the webinar or I'm watching the VSL. It's really the attention that you can get to your pitch and to your sales pitch. And that attention changes based on environment.
Yeah, 100%. It's, yeah. And there's books that talk about this, like the power of psychology and sales and the environment. And you think about traditionally people, when they're behind their computer, they're in their environment, they control everything, right? They're there, they've got their browsers, they got things, but they control the environment. When you take them outside, like putting them on a phone call or through a webinar, where now they're leaving what they're comfortable in, and now they're in Zoom or something else, like now you control that environment. And yours is the first webinar platform that's allowed people to control that environment and make it different, and then obviously be able to play videos after they push play. And like, you can control the environment, which is everything in sales, right? It's, when we do our funnel hacking live event, like we're focused on everything from the lighting to the sound to the stage to like, there's a million things that we're trying to take control of so we can give people the right experience to have the result we want. And typically it's hard to do that just on a web page, right? Where inside of the WebinarFuel room, you have so much ability to control that experience to help set people up for sales and success, which is the key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple of other quick questions, and that is, looking back, you had a good kind of like first look at WebinarFuel. It's evolved a lot now, right? Since then. So I want to get your take on a feature that we're actually adding to WebinarFuel. Maybe by the time people watch this, they will have used it or it will be available. But I want to get your take on it because I think you'll like it, but who knows? So basically we're like the only platform that can do an automated webinar in software, right?
Mhm.
Well, there's no platforms that can do automated multi-session events, right? So let's say you want to do a virtual weekend event, like a register for it, and it's on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right?
Uh-huh.
So we're about to release, probably in the next 30 days or so, our multi-session event portion of the platform, where you can literally put on an entire virtual weekend. But check this out, because I'm just interested in
I'm
knowing.
sold. Sign me up again.
So like Russell's like upgrade. So you have the multi-session event, but then like a lot of us, when we're doing either a challenge or we're doing, again, if we're doing an event like a weekend long event, like Funnel Hacking Live, you guys have VIP passes where you have the breakout rooms, right? So what we're adding is the ability to sell basically your VIP Backstage Pass. It's an event that takes place like right after the main event is over. You have the next hour, right? That's your Backstage Pass. So you'll be able to sell that within the webinar. So basically, I'm on day one of this, call it the free virtual weekend, right? And like 3 hours in or 2 hours before the end of it, it'll pop up and say, hey, if you want to join if you want your Backstage Pass, your VIP Pass, and you'll be able to actually purchase it in the software. So we're going to connect it to Stripe, so you never have to leave the environment. So you can literally just connect your Stripe account to WebinarFuel, go right in, purchase your Backstage Pass, and then you stay on the webinar for the backstage, for the VIP session. And then like at the end of the original session, there'll be like a 15-minute window or however long you want it to be, where you can play a little reel that's selling people into the VIP that's happening, and they can buy right in the software. My question is, do you think that's a feature that people will use? Do you think that's something that is beneficial to the industry? Because I haven't really mentioned all the things about it yet to anybody else.
It's interesting because right now we've been trying to figure out how to automate that. We do a 3-day virtual event that was live one time, and now we are doing it every quarter. And it's right now happening where we're connecting Zoom and it's kind of a nightmare. So that kind of solves that problem for me. And also we have our 5-day challenge that we've done in the past that was live and killed it. And now we have it just kind of on static pages, and it's done well, but not anyway. So I'm actually really excited to split test that with that new feature. So yes, for me, it's 100%. I can see 2 use cases right out of the gate of stuff we're already doing that I can plug in and run as a test. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's always looking to try to figure out how to take the webinars maybe to another level where people can use the technology, the software, the environment, if you will, to sell through, do the challenges, multi-session events, all those kinds of things. So I'm pretty excited about it. I want to see you guys use it for your challenge, because I think you can also like go right in live chat with people. So it's like you can still manage it live, but run it as automated. So I think that's cool. So all right, so cool. Look, I know we've gone like a little bit over the 10, 15 minutes I promised you. So I appreciate it. Yeah, let me ask you this. So I always end this with 2 questions for everybody, because I think it's actually just because I want to know the answer to the first one. And then the second one is obviously really helpful for us. So first question is, what is your favorite feature in WebinarFuel? So we have all these different things that we can do, all these different things that you can automate or whatever, right? So what would be like your favorite thing, the thing that you think has moved the needle the most for you by switching to WebinarFuel? And the second thing is, obviously, like, you're using it, you're having success with it. Would you suggest other people use it? Even if they're using something else, would you suggest that they take the time to change and actually use this, see if they can get better results?
Okay. So I would say, I was going to tell you 2 of my favorite features, but one of them kind of makes the other one possible. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, but the webinar room is my favorite because, number 1, it gives you that unique experience. Number 2, it's what gives you the ability to do the amazing sequencing, because you can see like how long is someone in that webinar room, they see your pitch, they not see your pitch, like when they leave, like how long they stay, and you can change your sequencing based on that. And so that webinar room gives you the ability to do all the magic that happens. So that'd be my favorite feature. And for someone I know, I get it. Moving a webinar from another platform or doing one or whatever is work. It took my team a little while to do it. But like you said, I didn't realize how much money we already processed through that. So was it worth it? Like, yeah, that was amazing. That was worth the week my team had to do to like migrate stuff over, write the email sequences, but we had a chance to dream up email sequences that weren't possible before, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so, it's a little bit of work. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's one of the things you set it up, you get it done, you set up and you step back and it's done. One of the philosophies I always try to teach my students is like, you should figure out ways to give yourself a raise every day. So how do you do that? You come in the office, it's like, okay, I can check my email, I can do these things, but like, what's something I can do that's going to give me a raise today? And if we focus on those efforts first, right? So like coming in here and like getting the auto webinar working and then putting it out there, like literally as soon as it's done, it's live, like you just gave yourself a raise. Right. And for me, it's 7-figure raise I gave myself this year by taking the time to plug that thing together, which is crazy. Right. Like if I wanted to get a 7-figure raise in a traditional, like if I was a doctor, I'd have to go like 800 more years of medical school. But instead we spent a week putting together something, putting it out there, and now it just works. And so, yeah, it's way better than going back to school and getting a PhD or whatever you'd have to do to get that kind of a raise. It's just coming in and adding that into, putting that process in place once, and then it's there forever. We've been running it now for however long, and I haven't touched it since then, other than opting in once a month to make sure it's not broken, but it's working. So definitely worth it.
Awesome. Well, look, man, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me to talk about your experience with WebinarFuel. And obviously, for everybody that's watching this, we spent a lot of time integrating WebinarFuel with ClickFunnels, like natively, so that you can do the widgets and pass the data back and forth and to and from and all of these cool things. So obviously, if you're using WebinarFuel, if you're going to use WebinarFuel, the best way to get your registration pages and your thank you pages and all of that good stuff is through ClickFunnels. So we're going to continue to make sure that ClickFunnels and WebinarFuel work very closely together. They're very tightly integrated so that it's really simple for all of you. So if you're not using ClickFunnels, use something else. I would suggest that you switch. Even though this is a WebinarFuel client spotlight, I will still tell them to use ClickFunnels because it really is.
They work hand in hand. They're so good together.
It is the best platform, and it's what I use. So we'll continue to make those integrations and continue to make these things work together. So I appreciate you spending some time with me. Congrats on 1.7 million. When you hit 10 million, man, I'm going to send you the big award. All right.
Yes, I can't wait.
Take care, Russell, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you.